So a couple days ago, an explosive drama between FedMyster and Pokimane broke out. First starting off with a 25-page Google document leaked about Pokimane from FedMyster, and then followed up by an hour-and-a-half stream from Pokimane responding to the entire thing. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But apparently Poki wasn't really satisfied with how she responded to it, so she has now made an additional response, this time in the form of a Google document just like Fed. Although this time it's 11 pages, not 25, so it won't be nearly as long. Either way, let's get into it. She posts it on her second Twitter account and it's titled, Re-Fed. It starts out with her saying, Intro. I've talked about my experience with Fed in the past, and I'm really disappointed that leaked and misleading messages made it necessary for me to respond once again. I feel forced to share my side of the story, now with evidence and context, to hopefully close this chapter once and for all. Knowing how much it hurts to have private convos leaked, I didn't want to have it to come to sharing more info that is also private to Fed and my friends involved. Out of respect to their privacy, I'll only be talking about some things that were already shared, and what my friends are comfortable with. The leak. I found out about this document weeks ago because one of Fed's viewers DM'd one of the offline TV members with a link to it, technically a prior version to it. There was no update at the bottom, and certain private texts were not in the document I saw. I was horrified that a viewer of his had such private messages of mine, and I immediately contacted Fed. We spent a couple days talking things through and coming to an understanding on how to handle things. I also informed him how the document was shared with me, so he was well aware of the specific person who was doing this. Over the next few weeks, I would have my close friends and other streamers message me and tell me they were also sent this document, sometimes from Fed, sometimes from Fed's viewer. Every time my privacy was further violated, I would tell Fed and he would tell me he'd speak to his viewer and have the Google Docs deleted. It kept happening multiple times afterwards, making it hard for me to believe that he didn't want this to be shared. Yvonne/offline TV. I'd like to give context to the messages he included of me talking about Yvonne, since the leaked document attempts to imply that I was plotting against her when this was not the case at all. I'm really disappointed that he would try to publicly pit us against each other, especially since he knows us personally and the reality of the situation, on top of what he's already put Yvonne through. This situation is also heavily impacted by the fact that Fed touched Yvonne inappropriately, which is something that the offline TV members weren't aware of until later. Please keep this in mind when reading screenshots involving other house members, because they didn't know and have done everything in their power to help Yvonne since they found out. Because I was so close to Fed, he would rant or vent to me about others a lot. Yvonne was a sore topic for him, where he would continuously complain about her. He would complain that he was taking on her workload, and that she would deny his attempts to get her to do work on offline TV, and stream instead. Looking back on this now, no one can blame Yvonne for wanting to avoid him, but no one knew what Fed did at the time. I've included an example of this below. She then shows screenshots between her and Fed. It starts out with FedMyster saying, goes into Yvonne's room. Yo, let's think of a prank/content idea since Lily I'll be out. Immediately gets into a game of League, smiley face. Poki responds with an annoyed face. Fed responds by saying, I leave and she says, hey, you gonna think of something, right? Yeah. Poki responds with a disappointed face and says, tell her what you think. Fed responds, alright, I'll do that now. Wow, I was surprised. I asked her when her game was done if she could come upstairs and brainstorm offline TV stuff. She gave me this face. I want to keep playing. I gave her a long stare, then just walked out. I don't know. Fed then sends a picture of him behind a whiteboard and says, I'm out here whiteboarding shit. Poki responds, sad face, I'll join you when I get kicked. You should tell her it's kind of part of her job though. Ah. Fed responds, you know I hate confrontation. It's fine though. When you think about it, I don't realistically think she can contribute much, but it's nice to have a human around. Poki continues her document by saying, these texts were from May 25th, 2019, whereas Fed has shared screenshots of things I parroted about Yvonne months later on October 5th, 2019. I was not the only person that Fed would vent to about Yvonne, although I repeatedly heard the same thing from him throughout those months. He would also go to the other house members to complain multiple times over, which ultimately led to the point of offline TV having a meeting to discuss everything. The below texts were after the meeting, and showcased that this topic stemmed from Fed bringing up issues about Yvonne. The messages are from October 1st, 2019, and it starts out with Fed saying, lol, I talked to Toast before the meeting, and we agreed that we should only bring up Yvonne thing if we really considered a new third roommate, but I'm kinda glad. Poki responds, oh, I didn't know. Plus it kinda came up in an okay way, I think. Fed responds, you guys segmented into that. Poki responds, my bad, yee. Fed responds, no, I'm actually glad. Poki responds, I was like, Why isn't Fed bringing it up? Lol. Fed responds, haha, yeah, it was probably better this way. To be honest, if it came from me, she would feel, I don't know, different because of our relationship. But all good. Cat's out of the bag. Poki responds, makes sense. It did come up pretty organically. I was surprised Skara had so much to say. Fed responds, I think I talked about it with Skara, the most, out of everyone. Poki responds, whoa, I had no clue. Poki then adds a note, saying that Fed complained to other offline TV members about Yvonne, connecting it to the message where he says he talked with Skara. Poki continues her document by saying, as you can see, there were also other members of offline TV that were speaking up on behalf of Fed, as it was genuinely because we were under the impression, from Fed, that there was a problem that needed fixing. At this point in time, no one else in the offline TV house had context that Fed had touched her inappropriately. There are also a different set of texts which show my concern for the lack of work being put into offline TV during the beginning of quarantine. At that time, everyone in the house, including Fed, content lead, and Yvonne, house manager, was very focused on streaming, and I was worried offline TV was being left on the back burner. To contextualize my concerns, offline TV has a history of hiring core employees that later became content creators. Fed, Chris/Pika, Edison, etc. And I'm genuinely happy for the people who are inspired to create content and are successful. For the overall sake of the offline TV company, these are important roles that need dedication in order for the overall group to function and be consistent. This is why I was worried this issue would repeat itself to the point where Yvonne would no longer want to work at offline TV. In Fed's document, he claims he told me what happened between them. But Fed also told Yvonne, and Yvonne shared this in her statement in Dr. K Talk, that he didn't remember what happened. I want to make it clear I did not have full awareness of what Fed did to Yvonne during any of the text/incidents shown. It was briefly mentioned to me in late 2019. First by Yvonne, then by Fed, that there was an uncomfortable incident that happened between them, but no details were shared with me. I had no clue of the severity or extent of the situation until much later. I learned of the full situation when she publicly spoke to Dr. K, and privately in a heartfelt talk with our girlfriends. In my initial stream discussing Fed, I was extremely frustrated because I had just found out what fully happened to Yvonne. And to think back to the times he complained to me about her, and I blindly believed him, made me livid. The same complaints that almost caused her to be let go from offline TV. Even more so than that, I'm frustrated with myself for not speaking to Yvonne and understanding her earlier. Given the context that I now have of what Fed had done to her, of course, I would have never said those things or wanted her fired. Anyone in her position would have reacted the same way in an attempt to avoid someone who has touched them inappropriately. Since then, Yvonne and I talked privately about what I've said, and came to a relieving understanding after an apology from my end. I regret the added stress we put her through. I'm so sorry to both Yvonne and anyone who read my messages with Fed, who may have questioned her or her work ethic. I hired Yvonne to work with me back in 2018, knowing that she was smart, thoughtful, and an overall pleasure to work with. I then personally recommended her for an in-house position at offline TV, and was looking forward to working with her in person. She has grown into her role at offline TV, and as a content creator as well, and I'm really grateful for her and everything she's done for us. Fed. Fed was my closest friend for a long time. During the offline TV Taiwan trip in February 2018, we became closer and considered pursuing a relationship. This is where a lot of the flirty texts shown in Fed's document are from. A couple months later, after he visited me in Canada, and when we traveled back home together, I told him I didn't want to be more than friends, around May 2018. Weeks later, offline TV held a party where I expressed interest in meeting a specific person, later referred to as Steve. After the party, Steve confided in me that Fed told him that Fed and I currently had a thing, and asked Fed to not tell anyone. This really upset me and felt like a massive breach of trust, especially since it happened after I told Fed that I only wanted to be friends. I confronted Fed about this immediately, and he apologized. Also, prior to my stream where I spoke about Yvonne and Lily's situations with Fed, I messaged him to give him a heads up, and he specifically asked me to not bring it up to the public. He also admitted to this mistake when speaking to my best friend Janet after the intervention. She then shows text messages to back that up. The first one is from Pokimane, who says, "Thanks, I really appreciate that. Is there anything that you would really want me to leave out? I don't know if I can accommodate, but I also don't want to make things terribly difficult for you. I won't mention the blank super personal details, mainly some lies and inconsistencies where people felt manipulated." Fed responds, "If you could find it in you to leave out telling blank that you and we were a thing, it's something I would just not like mentioned, but I understand if not. Otherwise, I trust you, and I think doing what's best for Lily and Yvonne's comfort is the right play." Poki responds, "I'm I'm sorry, I can't leave that out, because it's the best / easiest example I can give of lying. The next set of DMs shown are from Poki's friend Janet. It starts out with her saying, "Hi Fed, yeah, a little bit. Don't know the details, just that there was an intervention. How are you doing?" And he said, "Well, pretty bad. Got a minute to talk? I can give you all the details." So then we called, and he told me about what I thought was everything. He told me about him and the Steve situation with you. He said he lied a lot. Poki then adds a little note that says, he admitted to Janet that he lied to Steve. Continuing on with Pokimane's document, she says, "This is why it's so difficult for me to believe him when he just now, years after the incident, and months after it became public, attempts to deny it. Fed has been known to be a serial flirt. This was brought up several times in an intervention we held for Fed, where several girls in our close friend circle spoke on situations where he crossed boundaries, or made them uncomfortable. The girls at the intervention were all okay with this info being shared. For a long time, we all thought his flirtatious tendencies were just an innocent and natural part of who he was. I admit and take responsibility for the times I later reciprocated, and the ways in which this could have complicated our friendship. I would also consistently hear of the ways in which he flirted with other girls, and his ships, and often saw it on his stream as well, which made any reciprocations feel casual and insignificant. It may have been naive, but it was far from how he's attempting to portray me. I tried to be transparent about who I was seeing, in a conscious effort to be open, and not to lead him on, which I now realize struck Fed as hurtful. I understand it must be tough to move on from someone you live with, but I figured it was better that I was upfront, and to hear it directly from me instead of hiding it, especially since I would frequently hear of, and witness him flirting with and pursuing other girls, even my close friends. Fed also had a habit of sleeping in the girls' beds, Lily's, Yvonne's, and mine. Offline TV viewers might remember this because it was something we all spoke of as an odd habit, and we thought the sleepovers were strange, but harmless and just for fun. Fed clearly enjoyed the comfort and intimacy he could find in his friendships with many girls, and I was no exception. Unfortunately, he also had a habit of pushing the boundary not only with me, but with other girls as well, which was difficult for us to properly manage while considering the larger friendship circle and dynamic. Our friendship was complicated and confusing, and there were times we unintentionally hurt each other. Would it have been possible to cut things off completely? Fed was my closest friend at the time, my roommate, and my co-worker / talent at Offline TV. Anytime I tried to reinforce that I just wanted to be friends, we were always in the same vicinity and he would attempt to flirt and push that boundary again. There was massive pressure and encouragement for us to interact with each other on camera, streams, and vlogs. We'd also had several convos both in real life and over text, pertaining to the complications of our friendship. It wasn't just a one-sided issue. Over time, I learned how to properly draw that boundary, and these issues slowly became less frequent. Fed included messages of hotel room discussions that were misleading and taken out of context. To clarify, a few of us wound up in Vegas at the same time around December 6, 2018. I was there for a sponsored event with Lily, while Fed and some other friends were there separately for fun. I messaged him and told him we, plural as in myself and the girls, had a hotel room. I wanted for us to all stay together in his much larger room for fun, unless he wanted to stay alone so he could be at the liberty to bring any girl home with him. So all four of us, me, Lily, Fed, Yvonne, stayed together in Fed's room for the entirety of the Vegas trip. To reiterate, Fed and I never stayed alone. There's photo plus video proof of this, and this interaction was not meant to be romantic or suggestive, nor did anything happen between us. If anything, I feel it shows that I was encouraging him to see other people, and wanted to make sure I gave him enough space to comfortably do so, referencing the text where I say, "But I can also stay in mine because, you know." Poki then shows the text between her and Fed that was shown in FedMyster's document, but this time with some added commentary. The text started out with Pokimane saying, "Okay, so we got a hotel, but I can still stay in yours. But also, I can stay in mine because, you know, if you don't respond, then I'ma go home." She points out that the we is her and Lily, and then she points out that her mentioning that she can stay in her hotel is referencing that she's good to stay in the other room if he needs privacy to bring someone back to his room. Fed responds, "Mine," smiley face, to which Poki responds, "You sure? I really want to give you the freedom to do what you want." Poki captions this by saying, again, not wanting to get in the way of him bringing back other girls. Poki continues in the text by saying, "It's no worries, we have 2 beds at the other room." We, of course, referring to her and Lily. Fed responds, "Yes." Poki responds, "Beg for me to stay with you." I joke. "KK, I'll come over for sure." Poki points out that joke was cringe. Fed responds, "Yes, I'm sure," to which Poki says, "Okay, say it again." And then Fed responds, "Yes, please stay with me." And then Poki also shows an image from that same trip where she is with Lily and Yvonne. She then says Fed wasn't in this group shot, but Yvonne and Lily can also confirm that we all collectively stayed together in his hotel room for this trip. It's extremely frustrating to see so many private and old incidents misrepresented to intentionally favor him. It's also difficult to properly show my perspective without further invading Fed's privacy or other girls' privacy. I hope that everyone reading this can try to be understanding of that. In summary, I hear a lot of hurt feelings in Fed's statement when it comes to our friendship. I cared about Fed a lot, and wouldn't have wanted to hurt him. His feelings are valid, and a good reminder to me that what one person thinks may be going on in a friendship doesn't always match up with the other person's expectations. Looking back, I would have done a lot of things differently, and I know for a fact that neither of us handled the situation perfectly. However, our private convos heavily lacked context, and I'm not okay with how they are being misrepresented. Jody. The way Fed framed my conversation with him regarding Jody is extremely one-sided. This is something that Jody and I talked about privately weeks ago, where I've owned up to and apologized for the messages. Looking back at these texts, I'm ashamed that I wrote them, and I feel terrible about the things I've said. The two pieces of context I'd like to provide are that 1. Earlier that day I was under the impression that they were going on a date, and I was being supportive. And 2. The things I said about Jody are essentially parroting Fed's opinion of her, which he also shared with me earlier that day. They were also a result of my perception of her being skewed and negative because of the info he gave me about how he felt exploited by her, and my poor choice to believe a rumor. Below I've included the conversation I had with Fed prior to what I said about Jody for more context. Please note that some of the text/names have been removed out of respect for my friend's privacy. Some text messages have been blocked in order to not rehash unnecessary drama. That has been resolved and is unrelated to me. The texts start out with Pokey saying, "Also, let me know how your date with Jody goes." Fed responds, "Geez, this year has been unreal for you." Haha, not going on any date with her, lol. Pokey responds, "Oh, stop. You'd be down if she was in town. Just let me know how it goes. I like the stories." Fed responds, "Okay, sure, we'll let you know." Pokey responds, "I like the honesty." Fed responds, "No, but for real, not remotely interested in her. In all honesty. Me, Leslie, and Yvonne talked about this. I feel hella exploited. And when we hang out in, let's say, Minecraft, she ignores Leslie and all the girls. Big yikes." Pokey responds, "Huh? That doesn't sound normal. Isn't she really close with Leslie?" Fed responds, "You can really tell she's trying to push the Fody thing, poop emoji. And according to Leslie, not no note." And then he corrects it to more. I don't know which part of the message is corrected to more, but regardless, the conversation continues by Fed saying, "Lots of bad drama." Pokey responds, "What?" Fed responds, "So like," Pokey says, "What kind of drama?" And then all of the drama is redacted. Pokey responds, "Aw," followed by more redacted messages, and then she says, "Maybe she's not the most considerate person. But also, you saying shit like, let's talk about going on a date, if that's not really how you feel, is a bit hypocritical because of course, that pushes the Fody thing." Fed responds, "Then with the Minecraft stuff, Leslie refuses to play with her now. We all think trying to push the Fody thing for views. And it's so obvious when we are all hanging out, and she's memeing crazy tongue out emojis, and everyone else feels hella left out." Pokey then responds, but most of the messages are cut out. Fed responds by saying, "Yeah." Pokey responds, "But I guess long term it'll show that they aren't friends anymore." Wow, my brain boom. Fed responds, "It's pretty bad. Had a group call with blank about it all. Must protect my friend's feelings. I think I'm forgetting other stuff she did too. What time yo thing today, by the way?" Pokey responds, 4 to 6 I believe, and I feel ya. I never would have guessed. Pokey continues in the document by saying, "He told me much more, but I felt there's no use sharing more texts of past drama, and I want to avoid doing so out of privacy and respect for my friends." The conversation ended with me being very surprised, last text shown, and my perspective of Jody being very skewed and negative out of concern for Fed, saying he felt exploited. Furthermore, as the morning texts show, I was trying to be supportive and foster a friendship where we could be more open with each other and be able to talk about the people we are seeing. Later that same day, I heard Jody speaking about Fed on her stream, and having heard all these negative things about her from him, I had a very skewed perception of everything she said. Here is his reply he intentionally left out of the screenshot, showcasing this wasn't a one-sided exchange and that he was encouraging it. She then shows the text that Fed showed in his document where he claimed Pokey was being jealous of Jody, but now with the added context of Fed replying, "Ha ha ha, please continue. I love it. Ha ha ha." And then she shows proof that the conversation of Fed saying he was exploited and the text messages of Pokey talking shit about Jody happened on the exact same day. Pokey continues the document by saying, "This was a very familiar pattern for Fed that I and many other friends spoke out about. It's something I specifically called him out for in my first stream, and directly to him at the intervention. He would spread doubt and rumors, egging people on to think negatively of each other and dividing people up. I don't know if this was intentional, but it kept others apart and Fed as their main confidant." She then shows a stream clip of people talking about Fed as an example.
"Come to our house all the time, always in a bad mood, and it was always because it was like, oh, Fed's over. stuff with Poki or OTV is like not good right now. Like that was it. He would run away. He would run away constantly. And then while he's there, he's like just spreading bad vibes about OTV, which would slowly start to push us away from them. I'd start to have these really negative thoughts about Poki. Like I really thought like, wow, like she's driving him crazy, poor guy. Like, man, like, you know, I had all these negative thoughts about her, and I apologized to her directly about like not talking to her in the moment, instead just believing everything Fed was saying, because at the moment Fed is my close friend, you know? And so he and so if you're wondering why a lot of this stuff had to be aired publicly, and it's because that was the only way we'd see Fed change, because we had tried to address things publicly, and instantly with the intervention, he went running to all the people who weren't at the intervention, victimizing himself.
Poki continues the document by saying, "I hope the screenshots and added context shows how disingenuous it was of Fed to attempt to frame this conversation as me being possessive of him. Regardless, I really regret having spoken of Jody in this way, and I'm so happy that we were able to work through it. It also taught me a valuable lesson in not only who to trust, but taking opinions with a grain of salt." She then links to a new Google document of Jody's experience with Fed, but don't worry, this Google Doc is not nearly as long as both Fed's and Poki's. In fact, it's only about 2 pages long. It starts out with Jody saying, "To give some backstory, there was a bit of drama during the first initial Minecraft server that I am now learning the entirety of because of the doc leak, which actually clears some things up for me as well. The drama stemmed from a ship being formed between me and Fed, Fody, and how shipping inevitably excludes people. I wasn't aware at the time of how shipping in general had created past drama in this friend group, and thought nothing of it as Fed and I began creating Fody content. From a lot of the girls' point of view, I was probably being selfish, inconsiderate, and clout climby. To give my perspective, I was a newer streamer who had just started gaining traction, and didn't really understand streamer etiquette. Nonetheless, I still fucked up, but I remember reaching out to Fed because I started to feel uneasy about Fody content. The convo went something like this. I said, 'Hi Fed, how do you feel about Fody?' Fed replied and said something along the lines of, 'Oh, it's just content, whatever.' This convo was so long ago that I don't remember exactly what I said, and I deleted our Twitter DMs when Ray's Twitter got hacked. I went through most of my DMs and deleted the ones with addresses, phone numbers, etc. But I 100% know we had this conversation, where I wanted to make sure that he was comfortable and that everything was okay, and he never said otherwise. I remember looking to Fed during this situation, because I wasn't comfortable reaching out to any of the other streamers in this circle of friends, and Fed was the one that initially reached out to me. I didn't reach out to others because I didn't want to come off as clout climby, and so I would never message anyone and ask them to play games, or how they were doing. In hindsight, I now know better and completely understand how my actions were perceived the way that they were, but it didn't help my situation when I looked to Fed for guidance and he answered so nonchalantly, while knowing how Fody made others feel. So you can imagine my surprise when I see the text exchange between Iman and Fed, where Fed is talking poorly about my character, saying he feels exploited for views. Fed was the one guy who would consistently reach out to me, and who I felt comfortable doing the same with. He would call me all the time on stream, and we would play games together, and ironically, he was the one reassuring me about the Fody/Minecraft drama situation. I remember we met at Starbucks once I moved to California, and I told him how much guilt I still felt, and how it's hard to approach the others because I didn't want them to think I'm using them. His response was, "Jody, you are not an unlikable person. Just be around more and they'll get to know you." Referring back to the screenshotted texts, Fed talks about how he tried to come up with a neutral response to me asking him on a date, a prompt made by my community for marbles. This is where he states I exploited him for views. Now reading back on these texts, I know wholeheartedly that Fed was just lying because 1. Fed was a well-known popular streamer and I was a nobody. He could have just cut me out and no one would blink twice. 2. It didn't make sense for Fed to be constantly messaging me, playing games with me, or calling me on stream, and inviting me to events/parties if he had felt like I was exploiting him for views. Okay. So let's talk about the text where Iman is telling Fed about me and my behavior from one of my drinking streams. At this point, Iman has not met me yet. She only knows me from what Fed has been telling her. While reading these words really did hurt my feelings, Iman and I had resolved all issues prior to the doc leak, as she approached me months ago to talk. In our conversation, Iman was very honest and apologetic. I can understand why she viewed me this way in the past given Fed's portrayal of me to her. I hadn't spoken up about the Fed situation before because I didn't think he had personally done anything to me, but I still went to the intervention to support the others. Now I know that Fed was part of the reason why issues had taken so long to be resolved, and why I continue to be portrayed differently to others than I intended. Thanks for coming to my Fed talk. Jody. Pokimane then ends off her document by saying, "Ultimately, my complicated and volatile relationship with Fed had no part in why he was kicked out of offline TV, and such private details never needed to be public. It has been extremely jarring to have my privacy violated by someone I trusted for so long. Out of respect to my friends who are mentioned in these convos, they were all shown the texts and of course given the option to decline any convos from being included. If any parts of the convos were blocked, I have done so to maintain privacy for them and will not disclose that info. I hope this context shows my side of the story and helps put this to rest. Note, this is posted to my alt account because so much personal info has already been shared. I would like to clarify my side of the story and not bring additional attention to these past issues. I know many other people will probably cover what happened, but I'll be doing what I can to prevent personal matters from going public again, and that is about it for Pokimane's document. Definitely puts Fed in a much more negative light. I mean, he directly lied to us and cut out context of his conversation he had with Pokimane regarding Jody. I find that very scummy. But whatever you guys feel about this, I would love to hear it in the comment section below. If you want to keep up to date with this story and many others, be sure to subscribe with notifications on. Thank you so much to my channel members for supporting the channel, in particular the Dank Memes Play and Boar. This helps me out immensely and I appreciate it a lot. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video.